This is a video concerning Google Earth Pro, which should not be confused with Google Maps. Google Earth Pro enables you to add data points and lines of your own into your database. Now obviously when you download Google Earth Pro initially, it does actually come with some data points already included, places, borders, roads, etc., which as you zoom in, it populates your screen more and more. Now, as I said, that is also included with Google Maps. But what's not included with Google Maps is this opportunity. It's the ability, if you wish, to zoom in and place a data point on the map. For example, we'll stick that at Dundee, and you can go quite accurately, right down to within a metre or so of the ground, to actually place a point on the map. You can also add in lines. So we can see here, you can draw lines. As I said, that opportunity or that option isn't really included with Google Maps, but it is with this, which is Google Earth Pro. So the first set of data points that I'd like to show you are the divisions. Now, as you can see, these yellow lines, they are in fact the main rivers in Scotland. So we can see the River Ness, the River Spey, the Devron, the Don, the Dee, the Tay, obviously the Forth. Now, to help you a little bit, I'm going to put some data points on. These are the castles inside Bamshire, and these are the castles inside Buchan, or at least the ones I've done so far for Buchan. And if we zoom in on the River Devron, you can see that the actual yellow line really does match the course of the River Devron very accurately, probably down to a metre. So they are very, very, very accurate depictions of the rivers that exist inside Scotland. Now, some maps can be quite difficult to follow. They can be quite distorted. So for example, we can take Ptolemy's map. It's believed that the sort of south of Scotland was taken about 150 AD. The north of Scotland is probably taken from records that existed about 80 AD. However, it is difficult to read. But with this map here, I can actually place the actual names of on Ptolemy's map, like so, and we can see it's easier to see, and it's easier to appreciate it in its correct form. And we can see as well where the rivers are, which divide a lot of these territories. Also included inside here are some other names like the Caledonian and Meathi, which appear in other databases of a similar time period. Other difficult to read maps are some of the very, very early ones. This is a map from Pont dating roughly 1580, 1590, and we can see Dundee round about here, and we can see rivers, and we can see name places on this map. However, this isn't a map in the modern sense, in as much as that if something is further uphill to go, it's going to be further away on this map, so it's not to scale. But what we can do is we can actually plot this information on a map ourselves. So if I put on Pont's map here, I can put on Pont's place names, and indeed I can also put in the rivers and streams that exist within inside the area that we're talking about. So this is a proper geographical representation of Pont's map. And as you can see, this is a great deal easier to actually read and understand. Now, one of the biggest problems with this particular map is that there are now so many data points on it that the map can effectively be poisoned. It's very difficult to see anything on this map. This is just the the Roman finds and information in the north of Scotland. But it is possible to look at it in a slightly less. We can actually see here, these are the archaeological data points that have come from Canmore. And if I put them on, you can see where the Roman road lies. Now, these points here, Menure and northwards, they're there not because they are archaeological dig points that have been found as such. They're there because they're mentioned in earlier texts like the statistical accounts of Scotland, old and new, for the area, where the minister said there was a Roman road there. As opposed to these points up here, these are, you can click on these links here and they will take you to the actual Canmore site for the archaeological dig that they've carried out on this road. So we can see quite clearly the route of the road simply by following the archaeological information there. And as such, we can remove it afterwards. And it leaves us with just what is the road. Interestingly enough, if we look here, down at this point here, just nearby Bankery, we can actually see that the ford that crosses the River Dee at this point is called the Roman Road. And it does actually appear to follow very accurately the route of the Roman road. Interestingly enough, that's 2,000 years perhaps since the Romans were there. Another thing that we can do here is we can look at the layout of the roads and we can point to, for example, Roman forts. Now these are all of the Roman forts in the north of Scotland and on the Antoine Wall. They're represented by squares. The pink ones that you can see and the sections of pink road, they represent possible. This is the terminology that's used in Canmore, whereby they think there may be a road, but they don't have proof, archaeological proof for it. So they tend to, so I've marked them in pink as opposed to red, where we do have archaeological proof for them. But if we look at the Roman forts here, there are no Roman forts above Stonehaven. However, there are temporary marching camps. Now, temporary marching camps, they tend to indicate campaigns, military campaigns into a region, in as much as that they would build a temporary marching camp during a military campaign. It would only be if they stayed there for any time that a temporary Roman marching camp would effectively turn into a fort over time, just because of the work that would be carried out by the Roman legionaries. But just as a matter of interest, we can see here at Glenmalin, the archaeologists have found two temporary marching camps, 1 and 2. Now, one of them was built in about 85 AD, and the other one was built on top, and for a long time it was one of the largest temporary marching camps anywhere in Scotland. But they are one on top of the other, but they are 120 years in distance. The idea being is the Romans built the first one in AD 80, abandoned it for 120 years, and then when they came back 120 years later, they actually built another temporary marching camp bang right on top of the one that was there 120 years ago. I mean, I couldn't find these without a sat-nav today, but the Romans appear to be able to find them without any problem. I don't know if they had maps or they had some very detailed itineraries to help them through. Now, it's all very well being able to plot just Roman archaeology on a map such as this. However, if we look here, this area here is Clackmannanshire. It's a council in Scotland at the moment. We can see quite clearly, if I bring up the Roman road markers, we can see the route. We can see where the Roman road is round about this area here. The pink lines, as I said, are possible or probable routes, but we don't have archaeological evidence to prove it, in as much as this one here, although we do have archaeological evidence further up here that shows that the Romans did build a road there, but we just don't know the exact route of this, how it joins from here to here. But if we look at this one here that goes up Glendevon, I'm going to add in some place names here just to make it slightly easier on some of the roads. If we zoom in to this area here, this is Glendevon as we're coming up. Places, borders. There we go, Glendevon. Now, if we look at the Roman road here, we've got a number of data points. One up here, one there. But this area here, I've joined them together with a piece of pink road. Not because there is any archaeological evidence that that there is a road here, just simply because there's a road further up. However, when we actually go and look at this area here, this point up here, what we see is that the road seems to stop dead in the middle of no place. Now, it's unlikely that the Romans are going to build a road to no place. So I went up there to see if there was any, tactical advantage or any line of sight that would have been useful for the Romans to be up in this area. And I could see nothing. I could see nothing in the surrounding hills to indicate there any fortification, any towers or anything. But this is when it's useful to be able to actually include other types of archaeology. So for example, this is what happens when you plot on this map the drove roads of Scotland as per Haldane, who wrote a book on the drove roads of Scotland back in late 1940s. And as you can see, the Roman road joins directly onto one of the biggest and largest drove roads that existed in Scotland at that time. The inference being here is that the Romans didn't build this road, it was already here when they arrived, and it was suitable enough for them to use it. And which is why this isn't a road to no place. It's a road. They've just basically upgraded this drover's road to enable them to pass things like horses and carts, etc. Another useful thing to be able to add to the map, I shall remove the Roman road markers again just to clarify it. This is the military roads that were added round about the time of by the British Army in the early 1700s. Here we go. You can see, and we know from the writings of the people who were involved in building these roads, that they recognised the Roman fortifications, they recognised the Roman roads, and they believed that they were finishing off a job that the Romans had not started. And as such, the actual tactical and strategical emplacement of these roads, and indeed even the forts that they constructed at the same time, they realised that they were doing exactly the same thing that the Romans had done, and they wrote about it. Certainly some of the earliest drawings of the Roman fortifications in Scotland come from Roy's map of 1750 and onwards. So remove that. Now, one of the other things, perhaps the largest piece of information on this map, is not just the major rivers, but the streams. Now we can see, plotted on this map, we can actually see the extent of all of the streams, not just the rivers, but all of the smaller streams inside Scotland. This represents perhaps the largest work that's been carried out so far on this map, and they are very, very useful. I've turned off an awful lot of the streams that were on there before. Even though this map is nothing more than pins, lines, hyperlinks to other sites and text, there are now upwards of 150,000 data points on it, And as you can see, I've not finished the north of Scotland. Problem being is if you switch everything on at the same time, it's not just going to poison the map. You're not going to be able to see the wood for the trees. There's a good chance if you haven't got a fast computer that it might even crash your computer. But being as it may, if we zoom in on these streams, you'll see they are as accurate as the main rivers. And there's a reason why that needs to be, because once you actually start to plot information on here, you can see that these streams invariably are the boundaries of parishes, estates, baronies, and even name place collections, which I don't think we should be too surprised in back in the day when people couldn't read or write, rather than signposts, they would use the boundaries as the markers of their territories, and it makes a bit of sense to do so. Now, when I started this map, one of the things that I was intending on doing was to make all of the. It was a place name study. So after plotting lots and lots of place names, which, by the way, if we look at the information from the Fife Place Names database, this is an online database that we can find by Glasgow University. And if we type in the place name of anywhere in Fife, I've put in Abercrombie here, what you actually see here is somebody's gone through and they've taken out the spelling and the name Abercrombie from the earliest records that we have, right the way, all of the information that we have concerning the place name Abercrombie, including from how it's spelt on all various maps, right the way up until 1855, and then afterwards it's got a blurb about potential meanings of what this name means. It's a wonderful database, and as such, it's very useful. My only criticism of it is the fact that there isn't one for the whole of Scotland. It only covers Fife, but as such, it's a very useful database. Now, once I'd actually plotted the names initially, I then, as an afterthought, decided to go and have a look at the Canmore database, and we see this is the Canmore database, and this is where a lot of the points for the Roman roads and the Roman forts and such like come from. It's basically a map of Scotland, which includes all of the information that they've gathered from the various archaeological digs that they've done throughout the years. And this includes stuff that existed before computers. So they've digitized pretty much everything going right the way back to the beginning of their records. It's another brilliant database. And initially, when I downloaded you can download a file from Canmore, which you can input into Google Earth. You can open up a file. The file formats are KMZ or KML, and you can import them into Google Earth Pro. But when I did that, what I found is invariably all of these place names that you can see here, there is already an archaeological data point at those named places that already cover this. I would say about 90% of all place names in Scotland are covered in some way, form or other by the Canmore database. So in this situation, what I've tended to do is I've brought up there we go, they've got Glenducky Hill. This is showing this is Norman's Law. This is the link here that takes you to the Canmore database and the information concerning the archaeological surveys that they've done on this area, and this also includes all of the information from the Fife place names database. So it's combined that information. I'm going to zoom out just to give you an extent of the coverage of the information or the data place that is included in this map. As you can see, you really can't see the wood for the trees because there's too much information here. So it's important that when you, if you wish to look at something, you can, if you wish, go and look at, say, for example, forts. Now, the forts here are divided into white duns. These are forts, duns. Blue duns, these are not archaeological places. These are name places. So if it says Dunmore or Dunbeg, then invariably, these will be marked on this map in blue. Green duns are vitrified forts. Crannogs, moated sites, mottes and baileys. You can see the various different colour coding. And what we do invariably see is that we tend to end up with one type of fort per region, which is perhaps decries just how long that these boundaries or these streams have been boundaries between the various different estates, perhaps going back well into the Iron Age and perhaps even further. And as you said, you can add in, invariably you'll find there's Fliskmillen Castle and there's Norman's Law. There's Creech Castle and there's Creech Iron Age Fort, etc. This is also true. Now, I tend to use the place names that are used by Canmore to describe what they're looking at. So, for example, if they wish, they'll call these souterrains, and we can see the distribution of souterrains. Okay. I mean, obviously I'm looking at castles and Iron Age forts there, but if I was to remove those and then put in something like farms, which are far more numerous than any of these things, this is where invariably you can find your place name data. For example, if I wish to do distribution maps for something, for example, like say pit place names, I can do. I merely go through all of the data that's inside here, and I pull out the pit names, and then I can put them into a different folder. I'll just copy them over, and then we end up with this, which is showing you the distribution of pit place names in the areas that I've covered. Bear in mind, I haven't covered this area of Strathspey. I'm working on Buchan and Mar at the moment, but as you can see, the place names. This is useful for this is useful for linguists who are studying place name data. Also useful for people making Gaelic maps, say, because the information is already there. You just need to survey it, copy it into a separate folder, and there you have it. This is for pit names. This is for Aber and Cumber and Inver place names, Ochter place names. These are dog place names that we find in. These are ones from the Kingdom of Man. This is a kingdom that disappeared at a very, very early age, and we can really only see the remnants of it from the place names in the region. Obviously, this is still Clachmannan, and this area down here is Slamannan, and then we have Dalmeny, which is Dunmannan. If we look back in the records to see the original spelling, you've got Donovan and Little Donovan. This is taken from earlier maps, and the actual spread of place names, to an extent, it enables us to see where that region was. Once again, the yellow lines are major rivers. This one here is actually the Cramond that comes up near Barnton and Cramond. But one of the things that you can also balance here or compare as well is archaeology rather than just place names. So, for example, I can put back on the Roman roads, and then I can put in souterrains. Now, the souterrains is a sort of an underground feature, which is prominent in many parts of Scotland. But what we do tend to see is that it's most prominent in this part of Scotland here. Now, from experience looking at this, there does seem to be two different types of souterrain. Some that seem to be much, older, almost prehistoric, and others that seem to date from between about 200 BC to 200 AD, and we can look at their distribution at the same time as we can look at, say, Roman archaeology to see if there are overlaps, etc. So that's an overview of what is possible to do with these maps. Obviously, it's not a project that's finished by any means. It's going to take a great deal longer to do than that. But so far, I've completed about half of the north of Scotland. These areas here perhaps will have a different format simply because they're more mountainous. But as I said, that's a brief overview of what of the work and what you can do with Google Earth.